I think we are going to discuss tonight the exercises that NATO will organize. France is fully available to participate. I would also like to reiterate to the Danish Prime Minister our full support for the discussions that will be held, and we remain extremely vigilant and therefore ready to use the instruments that are ours if we were to be again under threat. I think that first, we are meeting today in this informal European Council to show unity. The Europeans support Denmark, its territorial integrity, its sovereignty, and also to acknowledge that when Europe is united, strong, and reacts quickly, things return to order and calm. And I am pleased that we began the week with a form of escalation, threats, invasion threats, and tariff threats. And we have returned to a situation that seems much more acceptable to me, even if we remain vigilant. And so what should be concluded is that when Europe reacts in a united manner, using the instruments at its disposal, and while it is threatened, it can make itself respected. And that is a very good thing. And therefore, it is the policy that France and the Europeans want to pursue. We are for peace, for stability, we want the international order to be calm, and when we are threatened or when one of us is subjected to pressures, constraints, it is normal that there is solidarity, that by using the instruments that are ours, we make ourselves respected. This is what happened this week. Now we will discuss tonight, I think, the exercises that NATO will have organized. France is fully available to participate. I will also reiterate to the Danish Prime Minister our full support in the discussions that will need to be conducted, and we remain extremely vigilant and thus ready to use the instruments that are ours if we were once again under the threat of threats. It is also a good opportunity to revisit the situation in Ukraine, both our short-term financial and military support, the planning of the security guarantees that we agreed upon a few weeks ago in Paris, and I think in this regard it is also a good way to reconnect. Do you think Mr. Trump acts or speaks like an ally or a friend of Europe? Listen, I am not here to judge. Things are calming down, and so we should be pleased about that. And I think that now, things need to be more stable and more predictable. That's what we all want. Has Trump been able to give his agreement, and what role does access to resources play? Listen, today there is a discussion that will begin within the framework of NATO for security, within the framework of the bilateral relations that exist between Denmark and the United States, and I think that everything related to sovereignty part of this bilateral discussion, and in the hands of the Danes. It's not up to us, if I may say so, to speak in this regard. And so the principles remain the same. We must approach this with a lot of calm. Tense exchanges at a distance with President Trump. What did you... I don't know. That doesn't depend on me. Listen, I am extremely calm and consistent. I've been talking about European independence, European strategic autonomy for 9 years, respect for sovereignty everywhere. We do it in Ukraine, we do it for Palestine, we do it for Denmark. And we are predictable. Simply, we expect France to be respected, Europe to be respected. And whenever they are not, we will express ourselves and act with clarity. Mr. President, you spoke about the ship, the tanker suspected of being Russian. We continue to act with clarity there as well. We explained that the Ghost Fleet was a problem for all of us because it allowed financing of Russia's war effort and it contravened the rules and sanctions that we had decided. And so the French Navy acted in good order to enforce the law and to thwart the movement of a ship that precisely contributes to this phantom fleet. So it's a good thing. It shows the effectiveness of the French Navy and the consistency of our effort.
How far are you willing to go to acquire Greenland?
You'll find out.
Europe is drawing a line in the Arctic. France has now formally asked for a NATO military exercise in Greenland and says it is ready to take part. The request comes at a moment of unprecedented tension as U.S. President Donald Trump arrives in Davos, using the World Economic Forum to double down on his push to acquire Greenland, despite fierce opposition from Europe. Speaking just a day earlier, French President Emmanuel Macron issued a blunt warning. Europe, he said, will not give in to bullies and will not be intimidated.
Competition from the United States of America through trade agreements that undermine our export interests, demand maximum concessions, and openly aim to weaken and subordinate Europe, combined with an endless accumulation of new tariffs that are fundamentally unacceptable, even more so when they are used as leverage against territorial sovereignty. And here, in the epicenter of this continent, we do believe that we need more growth, we need more stability in this world. But we do prefer respect to bullies, we do prefer science to plotism, and we do prefer rule of law to brutality. You're welcome in Europe, and you are more than welcome to France. I mean, it doesn't make sense to have tariffs and be divided, and even to threaten now with additional tariffs. We can use the crazy thing is that we can be put in a situation to use the anti-coercion mechanism for the very first time vis-à-vis the US if they put additional tariffs. Can you imagine that? This is crazy. I do regret that. But this is a consequence of just unpredictability and useless aggressivity. It's as well a shift towards a world without rules, where international law is trampled underfoot, and where the only law that seems to matter is that of the strongest, and imperial ambitions are resurfacing. Faced with the brutalization of the world, France and Europe must defend an effective multilateralism because it serves our interests and those of all who refuse to submit to the rule of force. And for me, the two answers are, on one side, more sovereignty and more autonomy for the Europeans. On the other side, an efficient multilateralism to deliver results through cooperation.
It was a direct rebuke of Trump's threat to impose steep tariffs on European nations unless Greenland is handed over, a move that has triggered the worst strain in transatlantic relations in decades. NATO leaders are now openly warning that Trump's Greenland strategy could fracture the alliance itself. Meanwhile, Denmark is reinforcing its presence on the ground. Additional Danish troops have landed in Greenland, joining ongoing multinational military drills under Operation Arctic Endurance. The deployment came just hours after Trump refused to rule out the use of military force to take control of the vast mineral-rich Arctic territory. Asked whether force was on the table, the U.S. president replied simply, "No comment." Behind the scenes, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has rushed into talks with Danish and Greenlandic leaders discussing joint missions and expanded Arctic security, stressing that the region is critical to collective defense. Denmark has made its position clear. Greenland is not for sale. Any attempt to seize it by force, Copenhagen warns, would spell the end of NATO as we know it.
If this issue, which is so difficult and which is so tense in relation not only to the Danish realm, but fundamentally to Europe, and for that matter also the future of NATO, that I do not think there is any need to stand and go through one by one what we have discussed. But I do see a Secretary General who is very aware of the difficult situation both the Danish realm is in, but for that matter also the challenges that exist in relation to NATO.
The most important thing about the meeting was that Trolls and I achieved some important things with regard to security in the Arctic. How many people can best provide for the Arctic in terms of security? It is important to know how to work with security in the Arctic. That is why we are now carrying out various exercises.